Hey Taters, this is Tree from Just Tree 401. I'm going to give you a small clip that was taken from our podcast that we had yesterday, the Secret Room XX, and we were talking about Diddy and breaking down the pages from the indictment. Now, I'm not going to be able to upload the entire podcast now. However, I'll give you the link to the unedited version in the description below. So this is going to be short and to the point without the extra commentary. So just stay tuned for the edited version of the podcast, which will be uploaded soon, but I will provide a link to the unedited version, which is available on Twitter. Enjoy. So we're going to go over this. The indictment has been released. It's been unsealed today. So we're going to go over it. Sharon, feel free to interject in anything I'm saying. If I got, so far I read the indictment, and after a while I started getting a little redundant, so I stopped. But if I say anything that I miss, feel free to interject whatsoever. You guys can always, interject whenever you feel like it. It's like an open space where we get to talk. So as you all know, Sean Diddy, Puffy Combs, whatever he goes by so many names. And in the indictment, they put all of his aliases in the indictment. So we're going to call him Diddy, okay, the Diddler. All right. And so he was arrested yesterday, but he was supposed to be arrested today. I did not know that. He was arrested yesterday at his hotel. He was supposed to be arrested today. For some reason, Diddy did something that kind of like put the law enforcement or the feds, they made them uneasy. Now, I know I saw several video clips of him walking around in New York, taking pictures, shaking hands, like he was running for office or something. And so it was like shocking to realize, like, okay, wait a minute, I'm seeing all these video clips of him out on the street. And then boom, he got arrested yesterday. Now, the indictment was released today by the Southern District of New York. And there are more charges coming, and the case is still ongoing. Although he's still in jail, he hasn't been arraigned, or I don't even know if they're going to give him bail. I don't know. This is just me guessing. I'm not sure. But I know for a fact, more charges are coming. This is an ongoing case. Okay, so don't think that the charges so far are going to be only charges. But so far, he has been charged with racketeering and sex trafficking. So far, these crimes are being investigated from the year 2009 to 2024. They have frozen most of his assets, not all of it, okay? But they're putting on hold all of his companies, including his shell companies, properties, cars, and or anything associated with Diddy, including his businesses that he owned with family, and that includes his son. This reminds me of the same thing that's been going on with the Tates. So it's like when the Tates used their friends to purchase cars, they thought that they were going to be able to shield them from being confiscated, and that was not the case. I think that's the reason why Tristan was so pissed when he came out of the courtroom and started lying. Anyway, we can talk about that later. He used, abused, threatened, coerced, and essayed women around him to fulfill various desires and activities. He and the members of his group, along with the associates of his business empire, engaged in trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, running an estate ring, drug trafficking, and distribution of drugs, arson. And that's been several cases. He got several cases of arson on his hands on that one too. That was shocking. Bribery and obstruction to justice. And more charges are coming soon. But those, what I just listed, are not current charges. Those are charges he's being investigated for, which are going to be possible charges in the future. In addition to the 10 witnesses who will testify against Diddy, all of his audio recording and video footage will be used against him. Diddy would also share these videos of his victims in order to humiliate, intimidate, blackmail, or to obtain favors. Let me explain what I just read, because I was taking notes as I was reading this. So Diddy had this. Okay, so I'm starting to see the difference between a lot of these men who want to be predators towards women. They can't shut up. They do things that will reveal themselves. Like, okay, well, with the Tates, they kept making videos talking about what they did, was like mask off about all the things that they would do to women, how they would coerce women, how they would physically torture women, all these things. They would just like mask off. And even and I talked about this on my stream yesterday when we were going over the Sneeko and Andrew Tate beef. Andrew sat up there and right there looked in the camera and said, yeah, well, they wouldn't allow my N-word hard R into Romania to human traffic. He literally admitted to human trafficking on video 2 days ago when he was going back and forth with Sneeko. And anyway, so with the Tates, they keep tweeting about their crimes. They keep bragging about their crimes on video. They do interviews explaining their crimes. They have a text messages and as well as a website about their crimes. With Diddy, Diddy is different. Diddy records everything, even when he's threatening, bribing, or coercing a witness or a victim to not snitch. He records that. So he records himself not only committing crimes, but he also, and that's what the obstruction of justice come from, because he records himself threatening, bribing, all these, to do anything to persuade a witness or one of his staff members or anyone who is a victim to not go to the police, to not go to the paparazzi, to not just tell. And I thought this was like, I would like to talk about this later. Like, is it the narcissism or what is it that will make these people? I think if you are committing these type of crimes, that you would not do anything that could basically you do something like record yourself that will be used against you. So when they raided his home in Florida, in California, all of these recordings were there, audio recordings and video recordings of all of his criminal deeds, the freak offs, the parties, the R word, the R wording of the women, I'm gonna just say SAs, the SAing of the women. All of this was he's done. He's just gonna spend the rest of his life in jail. There's no way he's gonna get out of this. Diddy not only abused a host of women who worked under him, with him, associated with him, but he also abused his staff who witnessed his abuse. All friends, family members, and staff who helped Diddy carry out his demonic crimes will also be charged in the future. So this is another thing that he's going to be done for, because a lot of these people who have watched and said nothing or helped them or helped get these women, help drug the drinks, they will be charged as well. And they probably will be given a plea bargain, or the charges may be dropped if they testify as a witness. So even though right now you have 10 witnesses, with many of them being victims, you're also going to have some of these people who worked with Diddy in orchestrating these crimes are going to also end up being witnesses in order to avoid jail time. Diddy also had foreign businesses, so there's that's being investigated, and the cooperation of those countries where those businesses are being cooperating. So it's possible that he's going to get money laundering charges included in the upcoming charges coming his way. Diddy carried out these various crimes through violence, use of firearms, threats, coercion, verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Diddy would also carry out acts of intimidation, manipulation, bribery, and threats of retaliation against anyone who threatened to snitch on him or who could snitch. And like I said, not only were there witnesses to this, but he himself will record himself doing this. The biggest thing that disgusted me with the whole thing was the freak off, these parties that he called freak offs. Those of us who have watched the interview, I forgot the comedian, I forget his name at the moment, but he was basically talking about these freak offs. But anyway, Diddy's friends and staff would conduct
Was it Cat Williams?
Cat Williams, thank you. Yes, Cat Williams. Cat Williams was just like, yeah, Diddy always want to do a party, you gotta tell him no. And these kind of freak off, these parties were freak offs. This is what he called them, freak offs, where he would get women, pay male escorts, and then he'll get his friends, he'll get his staffs, he'll even get his sons out to just get random women, okay, from clubs or from his studio, or any woman looking for a record deal. And once they got to the mansion, if they were not down, they were either drugged, intimidated, threatened with, and they were either physically harmed, like physically forced, and to lure these women into these private affairs, which is known as the freak-offs, to participate in sex with male escorts. And the freak-offs were solely used for Diddy's pleasure, because he would be, while these things, while the quote-unquote freak-offs will go on, he would be in the shadows or in the corners, or maybe even just watching via the recording device of what was going down. Okay, but I want you all to know that every last one of Diddy's freaks, quote unquote, freak offs, were recorded, all of them. Okay. And the law enforcement officers, the feds, have these recordings. Now these freak offs occurred regularly, and they would last for days. And the victims were given drugs by his staff to keep them compliant, along with giving them IV fluids to recover from the physical exhaustion. So this is when I was like, okay, I'm getting a little tired of reading this. Like this guy, like, in my opinion, I don't know even why he's alive. But anyway, so during the month of March of this year, when he was raided, law enforcement seized a variety of narcotics and 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lube. I'm going to say that again. 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lube. They also seized weapons, which includes 3 AR-15s, and all of the serial numbers were scratched off of those weapons. So he has also a lot of victims who have testified in reference to, and women who are saying they had to make a record deal, and those women have to carry out sexual favors and also be used. And a lot of times what was promised to them was never given. And he, once again, like I said, recorded everything. So this is going to be a slam dunk case. And because of when he was being sued by Cassie, that's the woman that he was abusing and R-wording, SAing for so many years. The company, she went after the company instead of Diddy himself, because he is on the board, and he is a big figure in these companies. So the companies itself, with the board members, will just go ahead and settle because they don't want the headache. What I'm seeing is that the government is going to end up seizing any and everything connected with Sean Puffy Combs, that there's no inheritance for his family. Like, they're going to be broke. And I don't care, okay? Because his sons are just as worse as their father. And something needs to be, the government needs to keep their eye on them too, because the fruit does not fall far from the tree. So what I want to say is, and then I'm going to let you all jump in, and Sharon, you can also chime in. One thing about this story that really baffled me is that men, of course, these type of men, thinking that they're untouchable. I guess my question is that why the government were keeping their eye on Diddy since 2009. Okay, maybe even before then. Why allow so many people? I just want to say, 90% of the victims are women, but there are a percentage, maybe 8%, maybe 9, are men. My question is, why allow this to go so long, so far, with him just destroying people's lives? I believe Kim would be alive if Diddy was stopped beforehand. I do believe he took her out. I really do. And I also think he has something to do with um, Big Papa being killed. This man thought he was untouchable because nothing was done to him for so long. Well, almost 3 decades, nothing was done to him. And I want to know, like, what do you guys think? Like, and Sharon, you can also add something in that I missed. I'm sure I did, because once I read the freak off part of the freak off party that was in the indictment, I was just glazing over everything else. Why do you think the government allowed this to carry on for so long, thus collecting more victims in the process?
That's the unfortunate part when dealing, especially for criminal. I work on administrative law. Mine's a little easier because this is statutes and rules. So like I go in and I regulate businesses. So I come in, I regulate your licenses, and technically I can take your business license away. I'm one of those mean ones. But it's specific rules and regulations. So mine's a little easier, even though I have to document significantly everything I do. I mean, I have a pack of paperwork and I have to document it. However, if I move to the criminal element, that takes a whole nother realm, and that can take us years. And then depending on the size and the scope of that, then you're going on years, which means sometimes that criminal enterprise may be going on for years while we continue to collect. So we might have back data, but then we are now going to have to do current, which now we're going to have to do video. We're going to have to get the evidence. We're going to have to do all these different things that come into play. Besides, now we're going to have to track the information. Now, if we're tracking money, depending on what kind of money, where is it going, where is this, where is that, that takes additional, time and years and dedication and people and resources. And that's what a lot of people have a hard time understanding. And a lot of times, especially criminal enterprises like this, now you're talking about multiple different victims, and it spans on for years. Now, somebody like P. Diddy, right? He went on for decades with zero repercussions, which in bold, if you haven't noticed, most criminals start out very small, petty crime. Then it moves on and they get bigger and bolder and more. And that's what happens because you don't get caught. So you get bigger and bolder and your crime gets bigger and bigger. That's essentially what happened with P. Diddy. He thought he was above the law. He would never get caught. And that's the majority of most criminal enterprises. And that's what happens. It's no different than Tate. He thought he would never get caught. He got bolder. He got mouthier. He kept going. And the majority of his fans think he's above the law because he has never been held accountable. Same thing with Epstein. He got too big for his britches, and he may have been an asset. I'm not going to deny that one. He very well could have been, but there's a point where you're more of a liability than you are an asset of collecting information, and you have to keep that balance. And when you're too much of a liability, then guess what happens? And then if you mouth off too much, then you're going to get killed, and that's essentially what happens to a lot of people. And then now you're seeing the tumbling, falling of what happens. And all these people have dirt on a lot of major players. And then depending on that dirt, depending on who's going to come out, they're going to follow that trail. And depending on where the trail goes and where it needs to go. So you have Weinstein, you have P. Diddy. P. Diddy is connected to a humongous music moguls, right? With lots and lots of outlets. So depending on where that needs to go and where they need to find the outlet. And it's the same thing with the Tates. Who was behind him? What mob bosses were behind him, especially when it comes to the casinos? Who else is behind him? So, who else do we need to take down and what networks? So all of that has to be tracked and followed. And it's all, I hate to say it, it's a lot of paperwork and a lot of people. It takes a lot of time and effort and years. I know my job, I do one case, it could take me 4 months, and I'm doing little businesses. So you add that to multiple businesses. How many businesses does Combe have? He probably has 20, and they're, at least I know, United States wide, some of them are international. So now you're going through international, then you have to deal with international laws. So you have all of those things, and then on top of it, you got trafficking, you got money, you got this. So all of that spans, and all of that takes years. And unfortunately, you stack up more and more victims. And that's essentially what's going on. But the engagement of what he was doing, which is commercial acts, which is racketeering, he has so many things on here. He's going to end up, there was fraud, coercion, sex acts. It was all right there. It was essentially is all, if anybody wants to, it's no different than mobs. That's essentially what he was doing here. He was doing mob-based violence and running it the same way through his music business, and then trying to push that money all through the music businesses and through his normal businesses, and then cleaning the money. That's what I see. A lot of this is what he's doing, and he got charged with the racketeering, which is the same kind of stuff, which is engaged in prostitution and then blackmailing everybody.